And we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Trek fans, Trekkies, Trekkers, whatever you want to call yourself. This is episode 2 of Exploring Star Trek Discovery. I am your host, Joe Hamilton. Of course, I have my Trekkie compatriots here with me, Mr. Kevin Stallings, Patrick Whitehead, and William Smith. How you doing, fellas?
I'm good.
Good.
Let's do this.
Glad to be back.
Well,
yeah, episode 2. We had a pretty good response to our first episode. I like that. 175, 180 views in the first week. It's not bad for a first episode. I'm thinking we can improve that this week. We are live on Facebook, everybody. We have a chat running up, so if you got something you'd like to say to the show, by all means, leave some chat here on Facebook. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We got some fun things to talk about today, some controversial things, but I think it's going to be pretty interesting, guys. So last week we talked about what we thought about the ship, the idea of Trek changing for the 21st century and coming back into something new. And I think we kind of reached an accord that regardless of our individual opinions on details, we're all super stoked that Star Trek is back, and I think a lot of Trekkies out there agree with that. Some more reluctantly than others. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, what do y'all think about the hate that has been espoused on areas like Facebook, the comment section on Facebook, which can be the most god awful place on planet Earth for a Trek fan? Have y'all read any of that hate? Because I know I have. I've had to stay away from it because it makes me want to fight.
Yeah. I know we had a couple of battles there, Joe. So, but I think it's pretty. I think it's pretty humorous. A lot of the comments just on different threads and things like that. People are just so livid about this series, but a lot of that stuff will, kind of be later on once they actually watch the series and know that it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, well, here's hoping it is. I think it's going to be. I think y'all think it's going to be. It's definitely going to be different than any Trek series. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely different than any other Trek series we've ever had in the past, and that is a good thing. I really don't want it to get bogged down with too much techno babble and the problems that plagued the back end of Voyager. Yeah. So let's see.
It's interesting if you look at the some articles that have been posted. Of course, it was back before the internet became a thing. But, there are a lot of people who were upset about Next Generation coming along too.
Absolutely.
The thing, their argument was, how can you do a Star Trek show without Kirk, Spock, McCoy? And then once they started watching it, it went away. And
it's. I think the biggest thing is it's probably just an expression of fear, because it's a series that we've all loved so much for most of our lives. So to see that it may be changing or shifting certain things that we've always known to be true, we're having to unlearn a lot that we've learned going forward, and I think that definitely brings an expression of fear. What do y'all think I say?
And people can be afraid of change, so yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So speaking of change, this is going to be the first Trek series that doesn't follow the captain as the main character. It doesn't follow necessarily the bridge crew of the ship where, hey, we're going to have a Harry Kim episode, and now we're going to have a Data episode, and now we're going to have a Sulu episode. Which is something that all Trek has done throughout the years. We're getting a much more serialized story, and we're focusing on a singular character, Sonequa Martin Green, Sasha from The Walking Dead, Commander Michael Burnham. What do y'all think about that kind of idea of us following a singular character and her journey on the Discovery?
I really don't know what to really make of it, really, because this is so unheard of with Trek. But I guess it's going to follow a pretty linear storyline with her. and maybe have some cross action between the characters like later on. I don't know if there's gonna be like another standalone episode with another character, but this is so unheard of, so I really don't know what to think of it.
It's going to be interesting to see these long form stories being told over a singular character like this, because we see character growth with all of our heroes in Star Trek, but having it focused on one character and seeing that journey from episode to episode and how her character is going to grow over the long form as opposed to a big episode occurring and then it's immediate character growth going forward with the character. It's going to be much more stretched out. I'm looking forward to this new type of storytelling. We got some very interesting bits about Commander Michael Burnham this past week from James Frain, who plays Sarek. He is our new Sarek. For those that don't know who Sarek is, and I imagine if you're watching this show, you probably know who Sarek is. But Sarek is Spock's father, one of the oldest ambassadors for the Federation in Star Trek lore. Super Vulcan. He is without a doubt, Mr. Super Vulcan. He is the very definition of what it means to be Vulcan. Well, with the news article that we got, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick, and I'm going to pull that up. Boom, right here. All right. So this particular article is at comicbook.com, and they are quoting SFX magazine, which is a great science fiction magazine. But it says, James Frain says, we see Sarek as a younger man. We discover that he has been made responsible for Michael's upbringing. Her parents were killed while being hosted at the Vulcan Academy, where there was a Klingon attack. So we feel responsible for her. Take her in, and I raise her in my family as a Vulcan. That is supremely interesting to me. So it seems like a little bit of Worf action going on, where instead of his parents being killed by Romulans in the Kittimer attacks and them being raised on Earth in human culture, we're getting a human raised on Vulcan and Vulcan culture because of a Klingon attack. I wonder how that's going to move forward, given that we know we're going to be getting the Klingon War. At least this first season, we're getting the Klingon War.
It's a little bit of the reverse.
I think it'll lead to some conflict. Like, there's definitely going to be that point where Commander Burnham, she confronts the Klingons. There's going to be that whole, you killed my family kind of thing. I seriously doubt that the Vulcan teachings of suppressing your emotions will have been successfly ingrained in her. She is human, after all. So.
Oh no! Yeah,
I think we're going to see her age out a little bit.
The programming will be broken at that point.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Pat?
The fact that we're kind of telling the Worf story, but in a reverse in a way, I think it's cool. I mean, they kind of go off on what Kevin said. Once she sees the Klingons, the programming will the limiters on her will be released. She will then be human. We're not going to go, you killed my father. That whole cliche trope, but something a little along those lines, I guess.
Oh yeah, right. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of balances through. What do you think about that little tidbit of character information there, Will?
Well, we've seen this in Trek before, especially with Kirk. In his ongoing feud with the Klingons, especially with the death of his son, David Marcus, and
bastard, you killed my son.
That hit me there in the heart there, yeah. But it'll be a good thing to see Michael Burnham try to balance both her human upbringing with the Klingon upbringing as well, because of course we know that Spock's half
Or Vulcan
half human,
upbringing,
half
rather.
Vulcan. Yeah, and so here's someone that's completely human but is raised in that teaching. Is it going to be harder for her to maintain that Vulcan discipline that she's been taught?
And we definitely see bits and pieces of that in the trailer when she's speaking to Sarek. She speaks of these kinds of difficulties, and so we get hints of that in the trailers that we've seen so far, which is really cool. Now, imagine being Sarek. Okay, I just kind of had this thought: being Sarek. All right, he's Mr. the Vulcan's Vulcan, right? He's the man's Vulcan. He's what it means to be Vulcan. He is a complete and total proponent of Surak's teachings. And, Mr. Kolinar himself. So he has a son who is half human and has those struggles. And he has an adoptive daughter, which is completely human. And he's married to a human. Having Michael be his adoptive daughter is adding another layer of interest to the Sarek character, who I feel like we've known so much from, what we saw in the original series to the wonderful episodes involving Sarek in the Next Generation. It's definitely another level of interest to that character. I wonder how frustrated he is from day to day dealing with all these fiery human emotions in his own Vulcan household.
He probably wants just one. He probably keeps thinking, I couldn't have just had one pure Vulcan kid. One.
Yeah.
Too little, too. I mean, he married a human. So what did he actually think was going to happen? I mean,
Right. So yeah, I can imagine it's the level of chaos in his household is much different than his neighbors. Keeping up with the T'Pels.
Yeah.
T'Pel. Anyway,
His is that house in the neighborhood everybody avoids.
Yeah.
House on the end. The house on the end. Stay away from the house on the end.
Yeah. Everybody's whispering.
Last house on the left.
Yeah. You got all the kids are outside playing, and you've got all the good Vulcan kids playing 3-dimensional chess and playing with their science gear, and then you've got these half-human child and full human child like climbing up rocks and just being insane human children.
Well, I have to quote this, but of course, we have to acknowledge Trek 5. We do know that Cybok is the firstborn child of Sarek, full-blooded Vulcan.
And he's broken.
we went. Yeah.
And he's not. Yeah.
I keep forgetting about Cybok because I keep forgetting about the Final Frontier because.
And I'm curious if they're going to bring Cybok into the fold into Discovery. And I don't know how that's going to play out. So,
see, that would be very interesting if we get flashbacks to Michael Burnham's childhood on Vulcan, and we see Cybok, failing at being the good Vulcan, but going through the academy and doing all these things before he ultimately rejected those teachings, and then we see a slightly older Spock, maybe 10 years older than Michael Burnham. Well, actually probably quite a bit older than Michael Burnham, honestly, because the way Vulcans age, probably 20, 30 years older than Michael Burnham. And then we see young Michael Burnham. So I wonder how much of that Sarek family dynamic we're going to get in the show. I hope we get a lot. I would love to see kind of like an inside look in Vulcan households and raising Vulcan children. That would be unlike anything we've ever seen in Trek before.
Right.
Sort of like Modern Family on Vulcan.
Quite possibly, yes. Modern Family on Vulcan. Oh, man.
Or All in the Vulcan Family.
There you go. There you go.
Bad pun, but okay.
There's definitely some interesting stories there, and then you kind of begs the question, like, okay, looking at canon that we know from the future, why had Spock never mentioned it? Obviously, we know because the character was just created in the writing process for Star Trek Discovery, but it does beg the question: did something happen to Michael Burnham? Does she maybe meet a horrible end or a dishonorable end, so Spock doesn't speak about her? Or is it just to assume that, his best friend Kirk knew about Michael or even possibly even met Michael, which seems likely if she's in Starfleet? It does pose some very interesting questions going forward about the character. And I hope through the course of Star Trek Discovery, it does, explore those questions, Like, I would absolutely love to see scenes between Michael and Spock, at Starfleet, in Starfleet. Because Spock's in service right now under Pike at this part of the time frame. He's first officer on the Enterprise. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We better get name drops. I know that much.
Right.
I can imagine Sarek being annoyed with Michael, going, "Why can't you be like your brother on the Enterprise?"
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Well, we know Vulcans are kind of private about their personal lives too, because remember Kirk didn't even know about Cybok until Star Trek V.
Well, I don't know if I would have talked about Cybok either.
And well, we'll see. One thing I'll quote Spock on this one. He says, "I was not disposed to discuss matters of a personal nature." So he keeps everything pretty private to himself. And even when you looked at this, what was it, season 2 of the original series, I think, Journey to Babel, and he was kind of reluctant to say what he says. Well, Ambassador Sarek and his wife are my parents, So like boom, 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 that was kind of a thing. He kind of didn't want to say it, but he was just kind of pressed to say it.
That's a very fair point. That's a very fair point. So we might not get any of that, but I kind of hope we do.
Yeah.
Oh man. So Sonequa Martin Green. She's a great actress. I know. Kevin, you watch Walking Dead. Pat, you watch Walking Dead. Do you watch Walking Dead, Will?
Halfway through the first season, so forgive me.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you haven't even met Sasha yet.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Really good character. Sonequa Martin Green is pretty fantastic in The Walking Dead. And it was once she was cast in Discovery, it was like, oh, well, we know what's going to happen to her in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Which, spoiler alert, happens.
They'll go. Yeah. It's fine. You can spoil it all you want to.
Of course, at the same time, the producers of The Walking Dead said that the decision to dispose of the Sasha character the way they did preceded her casting in Star Trek Discovery. So, there's going to be some very interesting things about this character, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen. Like, I mean, we know what it's like for Spock that struggles, more than many other Vulcans with maintaining his center, maintaining that Kulinar training. He definitely waffles back and forth a lot of times, as we see, when he was first officer of the Enterprise under Captain Pike. I mean, he was very emotional, and thanks to the menagerie, that the cage was canonized in the menagerie, so we know that's what happened. Yep. I wonder if that was before
touching a blue leaf, and then he starts smiling. So I'm like, what in the world is that?
Exactly. So it kind of makes me wonder if that was before he took the Kulinar. Do we know when he took Kulinar?
He took the Kolonor after Kirk's 5-year mission, so that was like a motion picture. But, but he never achieved it.
Gotcha.
I don't know if he ever achieved it afterwards, but I know he failed it that first time. Once he,
Yeah, we see him going through it. Yeah, in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Yeah, I don't think he ever tried it again.
Next to The Final Frontier, the one that I've watched the least is the motion picture. Not because it's bad; it's very good. It's a very good movie. It is the most high concept sci-fi of the Trek movies. It approaches Star Trek from a very, very highbrow intellectual level that a lot of the other movies don't. A lot of the other movies approach it from kind of like, hey, we're going to do a sci-fi action movie for a couple of hours, and it exists in Star Trek. So
it's essentially the 2001 of Star Trek. So
it's the most Trek of all the Trek movies.
It is the most Trek of all the Trek movies. Yeah, without a doubt. So that's going to be pretty interesting. Let's see. All right. Now we got to talk about what everybody has talked about on the internet regarding Star Trek Discovery. Let's talk Klingons. We didn't get into the Klingons a whole lot in the last episode, so we got to talk Klingons now.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. So apparently, from the little tidbits and stuff we know that a ancient resurrection ship or an ancient vessel of some kind has been discovered by the Klingon Empire, and this is what propels the Klingon the plot revolving the Klingon Empire forward. So I kind of wonder are the Klingons we're seeing current Klingons? Are they ancient Klingons? What do we think is going on with the Klingons? Is it just a design change for the sake of design change, which has happened several times throughout Trek history? You know, like we know that the original series Klingons looked the way they did for budget concerns. Then when the motion picture came out, it stepped closer to Gene Roddenberry's vision for Klingons. And then when Next Generation came out, it was like, okay, these are Gene Roddenberry's Klingons. What we saw with Worf and the Klingon stories in Next Generation. And then we got another redesign for the 2009 picture, or not 2009, but the sequel.
13.
Yes. What was that? What was that stinking movie called?
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness. Thank you. I can't believe I blanked on that. It's a decent action movie. Kind of forgettable Trek movie in a lot of ways. But it was a decent.
There's a lot of things to forget about
it. Quinto Spock's Khan.
Hey, I thought it was cool.
I did too. Like at the time, I loved it, and I still enjoy it. Enjoy it.
And the but
now I enjoy to rip it to pieces and analyze it and talk about it.
And the waffle begins.
Right.
Oh yeah. It's okay to reanalyze your opinions about things, Pat. It is okay for your opinions to evolve, sir.
Yeah.
Like I do enjoy Into Darkness, and there's a lot of really great things in it. There's some things in it that are up for discussion. So what do we think about the new design for Klingons? They're very hard edged. They're very.
My take on it is that, and I'm hoping this is true, but it probably isn't. But when I saw the design of the Klingons, I'm thinking this must be like a pre-Klingon, I guess. That's never been under any kind of changes from any eugenics changes or whatever. That they're just like this off branch out to the sides that stayed true to their raw form, and you still have the Klingons, the smooth foreheads and things like that still lingering about, since we do know that whole thing is still canon. So yeah.
Now, which begs another question. Now, let's explore this a little bit. Do the changes in Klingon design have to be explained in the series? Would you be okay? Because I know where I stand on this. Would you be okay in it just existing as a change, or do we require some kind of canon explanation, as we saw in like Trials and Tribulations in DS9, and we don't really talk about it? Kind of Worf.
Well, that was right.
So what do you guys think about that?
Explanation was,
Well,
it was.
I'm okay with it explained. It doesn't have to have an explanation to me. If you think about it, the whole obsession with the explanation goes back to the Trials and Tribulations episode where Worf said, "We don't talk about it with outsiders." Before that, it was never an issue.
Right. Well, they even tried to explain it in Enterprise with the augments, the failed attempt to create an augmented Klingon. And it seems like every time they go to explain why the design has changed, they just muddy the waters even worse.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's a design change. Fine, cool. Let's just leave it that way. Like, you'll either learn to accept it or not. Like, one of the things that was, like, we talked about Into Darkness briefly, I really liked the Klingons in Into Darkness. Like, they had a very warrior, like, very hard-nosed vibe. You know, one of the things that happened in DS9 and a little bit in Next Generation is the Klingons got softened to a great degree. You know, we got deeper and deeper into their culture, and then they kind of, it took that hard-nosed edge off of them a little bit as we got to see more and more of the species and their cultural flaws and foibles and the way they worked. One thing Into Darkness did greatly was bring that menacing warrior feel back to the Klingons. And it seems like they're continuing that trend with Discovery.
So basically, you're saying throughout, we use Next Gen, DS9, and DS9 as examples. The more we saw the Klingons and their culture, the more they were humanized. And Into Darkness and now Discovery has kind of brought them, de-evolved them back to their kind of hard edge, basically.
In a manner of speaking, yeah, I think so. It's like, I don't want to bring Star Wars into it, but it's kind of like what happened with Darth Vader. You know, you have the original trilogy of Star Wars, Darth Vader was just this unstoppable rage monster until Return of the Jedi. You know, and then we see what happened. But he still maintained that level of fear. And then when we go back into the prequel trilogy and we tell the story of Anakin Skywalker and we get the Clone Wars stories, we see that long arc for Anakin Skywalker. It brought that sympathetic air to Darth Vader. So when you see the original trilogy within the context of the entire saga, it softens the image of Darth Vader. Well, until the last 90 seconds of Rogue One, but that's a whole nother show and a whole nother conversation. But
don't show any visions.
Right. But when you look at it from that angle, I feel that's kind of what happened to the Klingons. You know, in a lot of ways, they became a little bit of a, not a joke, but they weren't. I guess when they teamed up with the Federation to confront the Dominion War, the Klingons stopped being the menacing Klingons that we always knew them to be.
Next Generation and Deep Space Nine kind of got too much into the politics of the Klingon Empire, and they stopped being the threat, and then they became an ally. So they kind of had to, I guess, but that did kind of soften up.
Well, yeah, like basically humanizing him, you know.
It's
like, I mean, it's the main thing. Like, take a carrot out of anime, walking, talking. As Joe said, rage monster, kill first, don't ask questions, sort the bodies out later. All of a sudden, they meet someone that goes against that hard edge, and they learn to, you know, coexist with that person. That edge is gone, you know.
Right.
I mean, I can equate this kind of to the Ferengi in the first season of Next Generation. They were supposed to be the main villains, and if you watch the first couple of episodes of Ferengi, you're like, oh man, they're kind of brutal. But somewhere along the line, they just decided to make
They became a
Ferengi,
joke.
like the comic relief. Yeah, they became the joke. So
That's why there are entire episodes of I will freely admit, and Kevin knows about this because I will rage against these episodes of DS9. If it's a Ferengi episode, I skip it. I'm just not.
Like Quark is dressing up as a
I
cross-dresser.
am just not even interested in the Ferengi episodes. Anything to do with the Grand Nagus is the worst DS9 episode you will ever see.
Watch the Magnificent Ferengi. That's the best Ferengi episode.
Can't do it. Like Quark, Quark is okay.
Ferengi.
No, it's not.
Nog's okay. Like Quark is okay. Nog is okay. You get Quark and Nog in the same room, and then other Ferengi, and it just becomes a horrible episode. But hey,
hello, brother.
and Rob, the retard Ferengi. Can we just please stop? Oh God, that was a little too non-PC for his Trek show. I got to dial that back. Like the
hello, brother. You want to play a game of?
Hey, Bert.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, brother. Ron was a good character. He took a while to
Let's
grow
take a spin of the double wheel.
Yeah, it's just
he got Lita. He got Lita. That you got to give him credit for that.
He got a hot chick. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how he scored that, but
Yeah.
Of course. How lucky
the level
is
of
he?
losers always get the hot chick.
Like, Lita was the DS9 equivalent of a stripper. So how big of a score was that?
But she had heart,
She did. She did.
She had a heart of gold, man.
Gold pressed
heart of gold.
Yeah, heart of gold pressed platinum. It's like slipped.
it's like Pretty Woman in space.
Oh God, I took us down a lobe-filled tangent because I hate the Ferengi. I hate the Ferengi. Yeah, you know what? We can't like every single aspect of Trek, no matter how much we love it, because some things were just not good.
Uma.
Oh God, no, sir! Please don't ever do that on camera again. I will remove you from the video chat. Oh, so yeah.
I love it.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. These Star Trek Discovery Klingons, they look mean. They look like a threat. Their ships are. They look like they would just jump up and beat the snot out of a Federation science vessel, which apparently is what happens to the Shinzo. However, I'm ready to hear that word pronounced in the show, so I know how to pronounce it. I feel like I'm botching it every single time. But they look cool. They look really cool. And there's a rumor that there's one Klingon that has been hinted at, and he's the only Klingon we got a small character trailer for. His name is Cole. Rumor is that he's actually played by Sam Witwer, who is one of my favorite sci-fi actors. Star Wars fans will know him as Galen Merrick, as Darth Maul. He was on, he played Aiden the Vampire on Being Human, the U.S. version of that, which was a great TV series. He's been all over. He played in Arboreal in Enterprise. He's one of those actors that just has his feet in science fiction, and he knows these universes backwards and forward. So having him play a Klingon, like a villain, warrior, powerful, raw, fuck the Federation, Klingon, I'm all for. I hope it's true.
So he's the type of actor that's like, hey, dude, we got this part in Star Trek. Oh, do it. You don't know what it is. I don't care.
Exactly. Exactly. He was, I mean, let's see, what series has he got? He had Being Human. He had Star Wars Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and the Force Unleashed video games. He has Star Trek Enterprise under his belt. He has Battlestar Galactica under his belt.
This dude just universe jumps.
Yeah. And if you've ever go to the Collider YouTube page and look for the movie Trivia Schmoedowns with Sam Witwer, and he's going to beat the snot out of everybody he goes up against. He is the nerd's nerd. So I really hope the rumor about him playing Cole is legit. I just want to see him, I'd love to see him on the bridge of a Starfleet vessel myself, but hey, we get what we get in this world.
He didn't want to play the good guy, so man, screw that. Been there, done that. Let's mess something up.
He don't really play many good guys. Let's see. He played an Arboreal Zindi in Enterprise. They were the bad guys. I guess is the most good character he played was Aiden the Vampire, who was still a murdering vampire in Being Human. I mean, he played Darth Maul.
Darth Maul had his good points. Yeah,
he did. He did.
Especially at the end, yeah.
So, what do y'all want to see from the Klingons in Discovery? What do you want to see from the Klingons, and what is a fear about having the Klingons back in Discovery? We'll start with you, Kevin.
I want to see them be the warrior race. I want to see them be conquerors, empire builders. Forget diplomacy. No negotiations. We conquer you, we kill you. You either surrender or you die. You're either our enemy or you're our servant, slave. Basically. My biggest fear is that they'll soften them up again. That they'll get too much into the inner workings of the Klingon Empire, and they'll become they won't become allies. We know that.
Not for another 130 years.
Another 130 years, yeah. But we'll start to empathize with them. We'll lose that fear, like you said, like with Vader in the prequel trilogy. We sort of empathized with him too much, and when you start to empathize, you lose that. Once you understand your enemy, you sort of lose the fear of your enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Pat, how about you, man? What do you want from the Klingons in Star Trek Discovery, and what are your fears about the Klingons?
Well, I'll do the reverse. I agree with Kevin on the fears part, but I kind of don't think we will get to that point with Discovery. What I want in the Klingons is, again, with Kevin, I want that warrior race. I want that first contact to be someone getting their head cut off with a new bat'leth that I saw from Comic-Con. I mean, screw it, that first contact ain't, hey, what's up? How you doing? Let's be buddies. No, it's who are you? Never mind. Take a knife to the throat. You know what I mean?
It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. That's my hopes and fears of the Klingon race in Discovery. So,
how about you, Will?
I want some more hand-to-hand combat fighting. I'm tired of ships blowing up other ships. I need someone, like everyone else said. I just want to see some blood. hopefully not purple blood, but I want to see some blood.
Well, you gotta have that violent pink blood, man. Like you gotta see somebody just get their throat slashed by a mechleth and just a spray of Pepto Bismol across the screen.
We're talking Ninja Scroll,
great.
people.
Yeah, and
Ninja Scroll 10,000 psi.
And I think really my fear is, what everyone else is saying. You're going to have some social worker come on board the Discovery and say, oh, we got to treat them with respect. We got to listen to their side of the story. They can't be all that bad. No. This is what we grew up with. As far as the Borg were originally, they were ruthless. You can't bargain with them. This is what this is what the Klingons should be. Someone you just can't bargain with. Someone you can't reason with. And it's someone that's so brutal.
Yeah, I really do agree with that. Like Star Trek is about finding that peaceful understanding, finding that way to coexist. So Starfleet needs to have those foibles about themselves, or they stop being Starfleet. But at the same time, I want the Klingons, especially in this particular era that they're telling the story in, to be the monster, to be ISIS.
Wow.
To be that monster that no matter how hard you try to understand, no matter how evolved your sensibilities are, and no matter how, I hate to use this word because the word's been destroyed by progressives, but no matter how hard you try to be progressive in your thoughts and actions toward this Klingon Empire, they're going to cut your head off in the street.
You want them to be the opposite side of the coin of Starfleet.
Complete utter.
Yes.
Yeah, I want them to be the anti-Federation. I want, because at this point, at this point, the Federation's 100 years old. Federation started in 2151. We're about 10 years before Kirk, so 102, 103 years old, maybe, the Federation. And it's been mostly peaceful exploration and expansion, except for the Romulan War that led to the creation of the Federation. But for the last century of the Federation, it's been mostly peace, as far as we understand in the timeline. Now, we may get more tidbits and pieces that kind of change that idea. But presumably, the Federation has never... They dealt with the Klingon Empire in the past, but they've never had, at least since the Xindi, which was pre-Federation, a full-fledged military combat, like conflict. They've been able to be the explorers and the peacemakers and the diplomats. And now they come across the Klingon Empire, and the Klingon Empire just wants to burn the Federation to the ground because it's their birthright. It is their birthright to conquer the stars and lead, and just lay waste to everything that doesn't bend the knee. That's what I want. That's what I want out of these versions of the Klingons. And the design changes and such, I'm cool with, as long as that core is there. Like I want to hear Klingon as we understand Klingon. I don't want the language to change because I don't want to learn more curse words in Klingon. I want Qapla' to be Qapla'.
Yeah.
I want them to drink blood wine and gah. I want those kinds of details to stay the same. But I just want them to cut the heads off of anybody that don't bend the knee.
And walk over the bodies of the burned ashes of their victims.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely.
Well, which it seems like we're going to get, because we just, from that article we just read with James Frain, they attacked the Science Academy. It's like, let's see.
This prey is weak.
What can we attack on Vulcan to make them know that we don't give a shit? Oh, the Science Academy.
That'll do it.
It's brutal. It's brutal. It's like a
terrorist.
It's like a terrorist attacking a university. Like a university is supposed to be a safe space, you know. Like it's one of those unassailable targets. And you're like, fuck it, bam, phaser blast.
Let's begin class, kids. Oh my god! Boom.
No.
Yeah.
Wasn't there?
How many times has Starfleet Academy been like almost destroyed? Now it's going to be the Vulcans Academy.
There you go. There you go.
That's irony.
Well, it's thematic to Trek. You know, because where does the Federation get its power? It doesn't get its power from the military. Hell, its military is barely a military. You know, its navy is barely a navy. You know, they've got a handful of war vessels, but for the most part, it's exploratory science vessels that have to be like, oh shit, it's war. Time to go back to, you know, Utopia Planitia and get refitted for battle.
How many guns we put on this time?
Because that's not what they're designed for. I mean, we saw it in Deep Space Nine in the war with the Dominion. Like, how many vessels had to go back to the Federation and get kit bashed together just to fight a war?
That's why the Defiant was built.
Exactly. It's like imagine like a fleet of Intrepid class ships. Like, they'd be scrogged, like, right off the bat. You know, yeah, the Intrepid's fast, but it doesn't really have a lot of great armament on it. You know, some Type 9 phasers, a couple of torpedo tubes. But it's science vessel.
Attacking Klingon ship. They just sit back and look. Go, that's all you got?
I mean,
but it does have a supply of shuttles they could throw at them.
It does have a shuttle replicator. Like the entire shuttle bay on the back end of the Intrepid class is just a giant shuttle replicator.
Hey, let's put a bunch of torpedoes into a shuttle and launch it. Word, fine bomb.
It's like, you know what? Let's just build a bunch of Delta Flyers.
There you go.
Maybe one of them can go past warp 10 and see what happens.
I know. We'll turn them all into salamanders.
Then we'll have lizard babies, and we'll throw those at the Klingons.
I read an article the other day that goofy-ass Warp 10 salamander episode of Voyager was voted the worst episode of Star Trek ever.
The worst.
Right next to Spock's brain.
His brain is gone, Jim.
His brain is gone. Oh,
his brain is gone.
So dramatic.
I that's one of the things I wanted to happen. It's like, you know, when the Discovery's complement of torpedoes is out, they're out. You know, you're not replicating antimatter for photon torpedoes. So,
hey, let's use a weapon that can kill us at the same time. Sure.
Right.
Let's hope this works. Attention crew, everybody to the back of the ship. If it don't work, you're dead. It's been nice knowing you guys, man. Yeah.
If all else fails, just ram the ship into the next ship.
Right. Prepare for ramming speed.
You know, they use that crap a lot.
They do. They really do.
That is Worf. I can imagine how many times on the bridge of the Enterprise D that Worf wanted to go just look at Picard and go, "Can we ram him?"
Why, yes. Let's do it.
Now, Mr. Worf.
It's like, Captain, I have an idea. What's that, Mr. Worf? Ramming speed.
Make it so.
No, Mr. Worf.
It's a tough little ship. Little.
There's a YouTube video where it shows how many times that Captain Picard has actually denied Worf anything.
I saw that. Oh man, we've moved away from Star Trek Discovery to just talking about General Trek now, and I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's good to have a levity to the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But speaking of the Klingon and in Star Trek Discovery, and to get it back on track a little bit, wasn't there an article recently that said that in the show they're only going to speak Klingon and it's going to be subtitled in English? They're not going to speak English.
That I did read
that.
Yes. Please, by all means, let that happen. The universal translator became such a plot device. Actually, excuse me, it didn't even become a plot device. It became a money-saving device. You know?
Yeah. Just like the transporter, yeah.
Just like the transporter. And that's honest. The greatest piece of science fiction technology ever, the transporter, was all designed to save money on production. And I'm perfectly okay with that. But I think audiences are savvy enough now where we don't need to rely on the universal translator. You know,
like Dormark at Teningra.
Yeah, exactly. One of the greatest episodes of Star Trek of all time. Great episode. It's like I want to see
when the sun sets.
It's seeing the Klingons speak only Klingon just makes complete total sense. Like that's the way it should be. You know,
so no universal translator, no linguistic expert on the Discovery. I guess it's all learning on the fly, basically.
Not necessarily, because those are aspects of Trek that are well established in canon and need to stay part of canon. The universal translator is well in effect at this particular time in the timeline. But it doesn't mean that when we're on a Klingon vessel and there's nothing but Klingons on board that we should hear English. You know, let's stay true. And I think for the most part, I'd be okay with no subtitles. Like, let's go avant-garde and just listen to the Klingon language and get what they're saying from context for certain scenes, not every scene. Like, if there's important plot information or what have you, you know, let's have some subtitles so we can move the plot forward. But if it's like a battle scene, you know, let's just hear them go, oh, Ichu, with no subtitles, just like, you know, making commands and leading the command of the ship itself. It just pure Klingon, no subtitles necessary. Let the context of the scene speak for itself, which would probably piss people off, but that's never something that I really worry about.
Or if they walk into the galley of the Klingon ship, they just order "Gah."
Yeah.
Let's break out golly.
Hey, can you imagine the subtitle for Goth? Yes, I would like live worms, please.
And Rock-Tagino. Live worms and ice cream. Breakfast of champions.
Good wine.
I would like worms and coffee.
You're blood wine.
And prune juice.
I love a little powdered worms with my coffee in the morning.
Instead of powdered marshmallows, it's powdered worms.
Absolutely. Oh man, let's see where are we at time wise in this episode. I think we're hitting the wall here. Let's see, we're at 53 minutes into the episode. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up with some final thoughts here for this particular episode. So where do we stand with the Klingons, guys? Do we wish we'd have seen a new race? Are we cool seeing the Klingons again? Are we cool with the changes? Are we trepidatious for the changes? Where are we at now?
It's something a little different, but for me, once I see the first Federation person get dropped by a Klingon, I'm good. Let's go. You know, I'm happy.
You just want heads. You just want heads rolling.
Yes, I want heads rolling.
That's cool. That's cool. What about you guys?
Well, based on the time period the show is set in, I feel like the Klingons are the logical, no pun intended, choice for the villain.
No, let's be honest. That pun was entirely intended, sir.
Full pun intended.
Well, yeah, there's on pun. Yes, it was intended.
I got a feeling that you've been waiting to use that pretty much the whole episode. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But based on like
Okay.
it makes sense. The Klingons and not a new race. That doesn't mean they can't include new races, but for the enemy, to me it makes more sense to use Klingons. I just hope we see some Romulans.
It makes more sense than Romulans at this point in the timeline. Now,
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes in the future. How about you, Will? What is your going into the premiere of the show in a few weeks? What is your final thoughts on the Klingons as presented so far in Star Trek Discovery?
I'm very optimistic. Not so much pessimistic as I was before, but seeing the footage and seeing the amazing costume design of the Klingons, I think we're going into a new era where, I mean, it's just going to expand more on the Klingon mythos and opening up some new ideas that we probably haven't even been exposed to before.
Absolutely. That's where I'm at right now. It's like we're getting an old familiar race, but we're getting it presented in a new way, which is fun because it's forcing us as Trekkies to go back and re-examine our views on Klingons. Because now we know that this exists in the prime timeline. So we have to go back to the episodes of Enterprise and look what we know about the Klingon Empire from Enterprise. And then we apply that to what we're learning here in Discovery, which gives us a 100-year gap to go, what happened? You know, there's story there that I hope we get bits and pieces of. I don't want it to be, full disclosure so we can keep the tension high, so we can keep the Klingons as, the villain. But I want to know what happened from the characters we saw in Enterprise with the scientist Klingon, who was like, you didn't think all Klingons were warriors, did you? And Archer was like, well, yeah, I kind of did. To whatever we're going to see in Discovery, because something happened there. Not talking about design, but like there was a cultural shift that appears to have occurred, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing, and I'm curious as to what that thing is. Once again, guys, I feel like we've only really scratched the surface as we ramp up towards Star Trek Discovery. Next week, I'd really like to talk about, the C word. Canon. I think we have to have. I think we have to have that discussion. We had the discussion about the Klingons today. We touched on it with the Klingons. We touched on it with Michael Burnham and the Sarek family. New dynamic that we're going to be presented to. But how does that change canon? Is it a bad thing that canon may or may not be changed? How strongly must we adhere to the word canon? Because the word canon comes from, the creation, the compilation of the Bible. The word canon has a religious connotation to it. And for Trekkies, it is a religion.
But for Discovery, well, that's wherever you use that word, but for Discovery, it's been said this show will break rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The holy grail of Trek will be smashed. You know what I mean? Not broken to pieces, but a nice chunk will be knocked off of it.
And sometimes in order to create, you have to destroy. And I think that's what we'll have to talk about next week, guys. What do you think?
Yeah,
sounds good.
Yeah. Another great episode, guys. I love talking about this stuff with you. This little show is filling a tricky void in my life, and I hope the audience at home really enjoyed this episode too. I hope we kind of touched some issues that you've been curious about, or you've been thinking about, or what are your thoughts? Make sure you leave some comments below in the comments section. Let us know what you're thinking. If you've got some comments. Or are we completely off base of anything? Is our head up our collective tricky asses? Let us know. Tell us. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. We've got a lot of diverse opinions here on our little show type thing, and I know the internet is a vast place, and there's a lot of very diverse opinions out there. And remember the IDIC. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And we can't be afraid to have these difficult discussions. That's why I'm excited about the canon discussion next week, because I think we're going to get challenged. Our preconceptions will be challenged in Star Trek Discovery. And that's always a good thing. That's how we grow. That's how stories grow. So, like I said, definitely leave comments down below. Let us know what you thought about the episode. What you think about our ideas? Are they completely off base? Do you agree with them? What are your ideas going into the future? I'm your host, Average Joe, the Average Geek, and of course, I got my buddies here, Kevin, Pat, Will. All right, say goodnight, guys.
Later.
See you later.
Live long and prosper.